I offer our collective pranams at the feet of our Sadguru. And I also offer all our collective prayers at the feet of the great saint, St Francis of Assisi. Namaste and good afternoon to all who are gathered here and who are gathered online. Today, I am very, very happy to welcome Fr Trevor D'Souza to our ashram and university. Father Trevor was born in Karnataka. He has devoted his whole life to the service of God through the service of man. He took his vows in his 20s when he was still very young and entered the order of the Friars Minor. This is the Franciscan Brotherhood founded by St Francis of Assisi in the 13th century. He was also ordained as a priest of the Catholic Faith in 1993. He currently lives in the St. Louis Franciscan Brotherhood, Andhra Pradesh. Father Trevor, we are very privileged to have you here with us this afternoon to share the sacred story of the great Saint Francis of Assisi. St. Francis of Assisi is very close to our hearts. In fact, all 6 batches of PG students who go for the cultural trip to Europe have all visited Assisi. And they have experienced the energy that is still present because the land is blessed by the great saint. When we hear the story of great saints, we all benefit greatly, more than we can ever understand. Their blessings actually pour on us abundantly because they are ever present. So we now request Father Trevor that you share with us your precious words of wisdom on St. Francis of Assisi. May we all hear and rejoice. Amen.
My dear friends, may the Lord give you peace. Namaste. I would like to begin this presentation with a song. It is a song composed on the words of St. Francis of Assisi, who was sitting before a huge cross of our Lord Jesus in the little church of San Damiano, Saint Damien, in the city of Assisi. At that moment of time in his life, he was searching what he must do. What is God calling him for? And in that darkness of his life, he composed this beautiful prayer, which is a prayer of enlightenment, a prayer of discernment, and is very close to the prayer of our Indian tradition. I will just sing this song for you. It's a very small song, but a very beautiful song. Pay attention to the words. Glorious God from heaven's height, see my heart how drab and dark. Show your lantern, shed your light. Touch my darkness with your spark. Give me faith to lead me on, hope to firm my tired knees, perfect love to aid my side, and profound humility. Give me wisdom for the way, and perception guiding still. All I want is night and day. Walk your pathways, do your will. My dear brothers, my dear friends, one of the main concerns of Francis all through his life, particularly when he felt inspired and was called by Jesus to follow him closely, was this one single: to do the will of God in all circumstances of his life. To do the will of God in all circumstances of his life. St. Francis of Assisi is a very tall personality. This year and in the years that follow, we have been celebrating 800 years of his memory and 800 years of some of the events of his life. A few years ago, we celebrated 800 years of St. Francis writing the rule of life for his brothers. This year, we celebrated 800 years of the first trip. That means the Christmas event that St. Francis brought alive for his people during his times. And in 2026, we'll be remembering the year 1226, 800 years since the time that Francis passed away, transited from this world to the next. And therefore, he is a tall personality. I was asking myself, how am I going to fit all these things into 1 hour of presentation for you? See? Somebody asked me the question, how did you come to know St. Francis? And I showed them this little book. This was the first book that I ever received on the life of St. Francis. It's a little story type in comic form, okay, in diagrams and pictures, which a young boy, when he reads it, begins to understand a little bit about the life of St. Francis. But if you want to know the life of St. Francis, this is the entire book. I brought 2 copies so that they can place them in your library. Those of you who would like to read it and enjoy the life and the stories of St. Francis, you can do this. You also have a lot of stuff online, and I'm sure you can access those things as and when you want to do so. So what I decided in my mind is this. Today, I want to take some very few key words and build the story of St. Francis around those key words, so that you begin to get a kind of a grasp or an understanding of this very beautiful human being, very wonderful saint, and a very, very inspiring personality. The city of Assisi is visited by about 3 million people every year. That is from April to September, basically, because after that is the cold season, and then there are no tourists there. So they always say, there's a saying in Assisi, you come as a tourist and you will return as a pilgrim. You come as a tourist and you will return as a pilgrim. So the first time people come to Assisi, they want to see They're all engrossed in seeing things around them. But after that, they want to come back to absorb the spirit of St. Francis. They want to absorb the man, his dream, his vision, his life. And that makes them return back as a pilgrim to Assisi. If you look at some of the literature that has come over the years, over the centuries really, St. Francis has been compared to very important personalities. People compare him. There are comparative studies made between St. Francis of Assisi and Buddha, for example. You have how St. Francis of Assisi fits in within our Hindu ideology and Hindu religion. There are comparative studies made on that. And therefore, when we look at this man, St. Francis, he's a kind of a man with a universal appeal, because his core ideas were brotherhood, peace, love, service, a love for creation. He is the patron saint in the Catholic Church for creation, okay? And very fond of animals, very fond of nature, and his life is built around that. And therefore, we see lots and lots of similarities between St. Francis and our own Indian culture, our own Indian spiritualities, and everything that we call our own. So let me start by taking a few words and building it around that few words for you, a story. We must remember that St. Francis lived during the 11th and the 12th century. Very important, because I cannot look at a man from today's worldview. I must understand a man in his context. And what was Assisi? Assisi is a small little town far away from the main cities of Rome, almost 180 kilometers from Rome. In those days, every city had a kind of a fort. They had important people who were governing the city. Every city tried to protect itself from its neighboring cities. There were little wars going on, little conflicts going on. And St. Francis also was part of that environment, that part of that situation of Assisi of the 11th and the 12th century. In the 11th and 12th century, there was also a kind of a mini industrial revolution, if you like to call it. Business was growing. People were going to other countries for trade. His own father, for example, was a cloth merchant, and he used to go up to France, from Italy to France, to buy cloth, to bring them back and to sell them in Assisi. And remember, in those days, transportation was a very, very primitive kind of transportation. You would have little boats to do, or you would have to go on horseback from one place to the other place and come back. So it is in that kind of situation that a little mini kind of industrialization, booming of business was happening at that time. At that time also, there was slowly a transition from the barter economy to the money economy. You know barter system, right? Okay, I give you some fruits and you give me some grain, for example, okay? Or I grow in my field some rice, I give you some rice, and you give me some cloth, for example. So you exchange things, barter economy. So from that barter economy, slowly they were moving into a money economy. They had some kind of coins in which they would exchange for goods and services, okay? This is important to remember because, St. Francis, in his desire to follow Christ, the poor Christ, totally and completely, took a very strong position against the money economy. So that's the 12th century of that time. The city of Assisi, I already gave you some indications about it. Okay. Let me tell you about the father of St. Francis. St. Francis had a mother, father, and a small family, a very small family. His father was a businessman. He was a cloth merchant. And naturally, like any other merchant, he went far and wide to get all the best kind of cloths which he could sell in Assisi. And what was the objective of selling those cloths? Money making, profit making, to grow richer and richer every day. So as you begin to grow richer and richer, you also get a social status. See? So there were different kinds of groups in the city of Assisi. There were people who were the landlords, what we have like the zamindar system in India, the landlords. Okay. Then there were the merchants, then there were the soldiers, and then there were the artisans, people who worked in the fields, for example, people who did little work, blacksmith and other kind of activities. Okay. Who were the richest people? The zamindars. The landowners were the richest people. Okay. And now, Francis's father, he was belonging to the merchant class. He was belonging to the business class. And through this buying and selling, through this increase in his personal wealth, he wanted to slowly move from the merchant class to become the landlord class. You see, slowly moving upwards. So Francis was in this environment. Francis also wanted to become like his father, very rich, very prosperous, and become a rich man. Okay. How many of us do not want to become rich in our world today? Everyone wants to grow in riches, right? Every day people are not looking at the Bhagavad Gita, they're not looking at the Bible, they're not looking at the Quran, they're looking at the stock market. What is the shares of the stock market, right? That's the interest of many, many, many people. So that's life all about, you know. So like St. Francis of Assisi and his own father. His mother, on the other hand, was a housewife, a very simple, quiet, pious woman, you know, who brought up her children in the best possible way. Okay, so two different personalities. His father, ambitious, businessman, wanting to scale up the ladder. His mother was a very simple, pious woman, a very lovable woman, etc. So that's the family of Francis. Now, Francis, as a young boy, as a teenager, maybe like a teenager, see, just like any other teenager of our times, okay, he was a very flamboyant person, Lots of friends. He was like honey that brought all the flies to him. You know, and he had a good group of friends. His father gave him a lot pocket money, enough for him. So, you know, roaming around with friends, enjoying his life, okay, all that. Now, St. Francis, after some time, joined the army, the military, because he had to protect, like any other youth of that day, to protect his commune, his city of Assisi from other people who were attacking them or would come to attack them. And being a soldier in the army, his dream was, I want to be a knight. I want to be a high-ranked officer. I want to be the best officer. I want to be the best soldier in the army, to be a knight. See, this was his dream. This was his ambition. Okay? And he was working hard, struggling hard in this endeavor of life. Humans' plans are one thing. God's plans are another thing. As somewhere in the Bible, we have a quotation which says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. My plans are not your plans. And sometimes there can be a conflict between our plans and the plans of God. See, there can be a conflict sometimes. And this is exactly what Francis faced in his life. One day, all dressed up in his military clothes, he was ready to go to join his people there for the war. And as he was going on his horse in a place called Apulia, suddenly his horse fell down and the man was thrown on the ground. Can you imagine what it means for a soldier to fall to the ground? See, a soldier falling to the ground is already a defeat. Already a defeat. What is the symbolism in falling to the ground? God first takes you to the lowest levels before he takes you to the highest levels. And in that moment of time, Francis heard a voice. Whom do you want to serve? Do you want to serve the master, or do you want to serve the servant? Whom do you want to serve? And Francis looked around, wondering from where the voice was coming. And finally he said, I want to serve the master. If you want to serve the master, take your horse and turn around. Go back. Go back. When God intervenes in our lives, not only we have to fall down from our horses, but we also need to make a U-turn in our life. We have to make a U-turn in our life. And some of the stories I was hearing from, some of your esteemed people here this morning, is all about these little U-turns that happen in their life. Every one of us will be able to identify for ourselves, when did God strike us down from the horse of our life, and how God brought about that U-turn in our life. So these are all symbolisms, but practical things which we'll experience in life. And I'm see. And then his mind began to change. He began to ask himself serious questions. What is happening to me? What is the meaning of life? What am I supposed to do? Why is this happening to me in my life? And then he begins to go to the quiet forest, the lonely places, to spend time by himself, by his quietness of life. My dear friends, when you spend time with yourself, and when you spend time in silence, God begins to speak to us. God's voice begins to speak to us. We begin to hear the whispers of God in our life. It is not in the busyness of life that we begin to hear God's whispering. It's in the silence, the inner silence, the inner quietness. Asking questions, what is my life all about? What is my life all about? And there, St. Francis began to wonder. On a certain occasion, he entered a broken down church called San Damiano. And in that church, there was a huge cross, which is still there in Assisi. If some of you happen to go to Assisi and you visit a church called St. Clara, in that church, you will find that original cross, which is now over 800 years old. It's still there in Assisi. And you will see that in the presentation somewhere. You will see that in the presentation here. So St. Francis went to that church, knelt down before that cross, and began to pray and ask God, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? What is your plan for me? What is your will for me? Why have you made all this disturbance in my life? What do you want me to do? And as Francis was praying and praying and praying, one day he heard the voice of Jesus telling him, Francis, I want you to go and repair my church. You can see my church falling down. I want you to go and repair my church. So Francis looked at the church all around him. And what did he see? He saw, oh yes, the church is all broken down. So Jesus is asking me to repair this church. He thought he must repair the physical church that is broken down. So he went about collecting some stones around his place. He went to the marketplaces and began to sing songs in the marketplaces. inviting people, please come, help me to build the church, to repair the church there. Give me donations of stones and mortar and bricks and whatever so that I can repair the church. And he began to physically repair the church. Slowly, slowly, step by step, year by year, as time passed by, Francis began to realize it is not the building that God wants him to repair, but who is the church? The people of God, the people of God. Every one of us belongs to the church of God. Every one of us belongs to the temple of God. Every one of us are sons and daughters of God himself. And therefore, what started in this way slowly began to understand it is not the physical building of brick and stone and mortar, but rather it is the people of God that God wants me to build. And therefore, there's another kind of journey that begins in the life of Francis. My dear friends, in your life as well, things will start exactly in the same way. It will start with some kind of an understanding. But as you begin to progress in your life in the ways of God, your understanding will be completely different. God will begin to make your mind more and more clear on what you must do and how you must do it in order that you can become his true follower, his true servant. So St. Francis was busy with all this. One day he was going on the road and, coming from quite a wealthy family, he was used to a very comfortable lifestyle. At that time in Assisi, there were lots of people suffering from leprosy. You know what's leprosy, no? Leprosy, okay? Christoroga, leprosy. And leprosy can become very difficult. It can become very challenging because your hands and your legs and your face, everything gets deformed, and nobody wants to be close by to you. People push you to the corners of the society. You're supposed to be living in very remote places, all those kind of things. And St. Francis was going on the road. He came across a leper sitting by the roadside. And then a big challenge for him. What to do? Who is this man? How must I respond to this man on the roadside? And then Francis gets down from his horse, goes to that leper, embraces that leper, and kisses that leper. He embraces that leper and kisses that leper. And that becomes a huge experience in the life of Francis. A huge experience in the life of Francis. Just imagine if a leper person came in front of you, how would you respond? How would you react? Would you be able to embrace him? Would you be able to kiss him? That's the challenge of life. That's the challenge of life. And then Francis writes in his testimony, he writes there, before this, everything was bitter in my life. But the moment I embraced this leper, what I thought was bitter, what I thought was nauseating, now became sweet and beautiful for me. And that experience remained an experience for the next 20 years of his life. Every time he will recall to his mind that encounter with the leper, because he says for himself, in that encounter, it was not encountering the leper really, it was encountering his Lord Jesus Christ, the poor Lord Jesus Christ, the crucified Lord Jesus Christ. And that experience of his will accompany him right to the day of his transitus. So that was the leper. Now St. Francis is convinced that he cannot anymore live his life as a businessman. He cannot anymore live his life as a military man. He has to dedicate his life totally and completely to God. Why? Number one, God had given him a vision. You want to serve the master? Turn back. Second, go and repair my church, remained in his mind. Thirdly, the encounter with a leper. Big experiences for him. Three big turning points in his life. Three big turning points in his life. And therefore now Francis comes home. He's thinking what to do, how to tell his father, how to tell his father. His father has all the dreams in his mind. One day my son is going to be the big man of Assisi. I'm going to have sufficient money for him. After a few years, when he gets married, he is going to get married to the most beautiful girl of Assisi. He is going to get married to the most richest girl of Assisi. These are the dreams in the mind of his father. Just like the dreams of any of our fathers, maybe. And then this man is thinking in his mind now, how to tell my father that I don't want his property, that I don't want his money, that I don't want the most beautiful girl in Assisi, but I have to follow Jesus. His father, in the meantime, had gone to France to bring all the best cloths to be sold in Assisi. And what does Francis do one day? He goes into his father's shop and he takes all the cloth from the father's shop, goes on the balcony of the father's shop, and he begins to throw the cloth out of the window. He begins to throw all the cloth out the window, and poor people come there and begin to collect the cloth and take home and go. Then says, you want more? Take more. He begins to empty the shop of all the cloth in the father's shop. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? And when his father came back, what do you think? What do you think was his father's response? He was furious. He was furious. He was mad at Francis. I have gone all the way to France to buy these beautiful cloths and come here, and I have stored them up because these are worth so much of money. And I would have become a rich man, and you, my son, has simply thrown the cloth out of the window and given it to the poor. So he's mad at Francis. And what did he do? He put Francis in a small jail in his house, a very small jail. See, maybe just about, I'll tell you, about 5 feet by about 3 feet into, say, about 3 feet of depth. That's the jail. That's the dimension of the jail. I had a great privilege on one occasion to visit Assisi and to live in the house of St. Francis, where he was born. And I personally saw for myself that little jail in which Francis was placed. It is just enough for you to stand there, just enough for you to stand there. See? And his father gave his mother strict warning. You will not release this boy out of that prison. He has to be there till he changes his mind, till he wants to become a businessman. He wants to be a rich man of Assisi. You will not allow him to get out of that place. And Francis is there in that little place, his mother visiting him now and then with food and trying to console him and comfort him and trying to change his mind. But Francis's mind is made up. The more the challenge, the more he became convinced, no, I have to follow Jesus Christ and only Jesus Christ, nobody else. One day, his mother quietly opened the prison and let Francis go. And again, his father was furious. So his father went to the local bishop, who's the religious head of the place of Assisi, the local bishop. And he complained to him and he said, you know what my son has done? He has taken all my property. He has taken all my clothes, given to the poor. I want my son to come back and return all my money. I want him to return all my money. In those days, my dear friends, the bishop was a very powerful political figure of the city. And therefore, people went to him to resolve their problems and conflicts and difficulties and other things. So the Bishop of Assisi called Francis, called the father, and that became a big talk in the town, Whole town of Assisi gathered there to see the tamasha that was taking place between the father and the son. This big family of, his name was called as Peter Bernardone, the family of Peter Bernardone. And his father said before the bishop and all the people, I want all my property back. He has to pay me his property. So Francis looked at himself. He said, cloth I have already given away. I don't have any money with me. No money with me. What do I have of my father on me? Oh, this shirt belongs to my father. This pant belongs to my father. These shoes belong to my father. So he removed his shirt, he removed his pant, he removed his shoes, he removed everything and kept it at his father's feet. He was absolutely naked. He removed everything that he had on his body, kept at his father's feet, and then he told, from today onwards, Peter Bernardone is no more my father. Is no more my father. I have given you everything that is yours. From today onwards, I have only one father, and that father is in heaven. And from today onwards, my father in heaven. That's it. Can you imagine the situation? Try to picture the situation in your mind. See? And then the Bishop of Assisi comes and puts his cloth around Francis and takes him, and gives him clothes to wear. And then a new journey begins for Francis. A completely new journey begins for Francis. Okay. As Francis began to progress in his spiritual life, okay, as Francis began to progress in his spiritual life, there are two key words which stand out in the life of St. Francis, two key words. What are these two words? One is the word friar. The other is the word minor. Friar, minor. These are Italian words, Latin words, Italian words. Friar simply means brother. A friar means a brother. And minor means a little brother, a younger brother, a little brother. So, as Francis began to go and repair churches, he began to spend lots of time in prayer, lots of time in silence, etc. And people began to wonder, looking at this young man, he must have been barely in his 20s, Looking at this young man of Assisi, they began to wonder, something has happened to him which is simply extraordinary. And they began to ask themselves questions as well. At the same time, they began to look at him and say, this fellow must have gone something mad. I think something is wrong with him. See? Who leaves a nice, comfortable house? Who leaves a nice, comfortable home? Who throws all his clothes and abandons his family? Who goes out begging for alms? Now, every day he had to go with a begging bowl and ask people, give me some food to eat. Give me some food to eat. Give me something to drink. Give me stones to build my church. Give me some bricks, some mortar to build my church. He was sleeping in the old abandoned churches. He was sleeping in the farms. He was going to work in the leprosarium, which was close by. And he was spending his time quietly in the forest, in prayer, in silence, in meditation, etc. Slowly, people began to get attracted to him. There is an example of the first person who came and joined him. His name was called Bernard of Quintavalle, a very, very rich man, And one day he went to Bernard's house to ask for some little food. And Bernard said, you please come inside and you rest here for the night. Rest in my house for the night. And he gave him a nice little place. And Bernard was watching quietly. Who is this man? Is this man real, or is he just a bluffing? You know, he's doing a kind of a drama. He was watching him. So Francis began pretending to sleep. And after Bernard of Quintavalle disappeared from the place. Now remember, in those days, no electricity, no lights. You had to take a little lamp and go around the place, etc. So once Bernard of Quintavalle went, this man got up, knelt by his bedside, and began to pray to God. And Bernard of Quintavalle, on the other hand, was sitting quietly and watching in his room what this man is doing. And when he saw this man is a genuine person, an authentic person, next day when they got up, he said to Francis, Francis, I want to join you. I want to be like you. I want to follow your way of life. What should I do? What should I do? Francis said, I don't know what you should do, but we'll do one thing. Let us go and ask Jesus what we must do. As I said earlier, his only ambition in life was to do the will of God, to do the will of God. So they went to the church. There was a big book there. The Bible was there. Remember, once again, my dear friends, in those days, there was no printed books. No printed books. We are talking about the 12th century, 11th, 12th century. No printed books. They had handwritten Bibles, Okay. So it was very, very rare to have a Bible with people. So they went to the church, they prayed in the church, and they went and opened the Bible, one page. And they put one finger there, and they began to read. And the text was, if you want to be my disciple, go and sell all you have, give to the poor, and then come and follow me. The first text they got from the Bible was randomly opened. First text they got, if you want to be my disciple, go and sell all that you have, give to the poor, and come and follow me. So Francis looked at Bernard and said, you heard what Jesus has told us. If you want to follow me, do likewise. You can imagine a man who had, in today's property matters, crores of rupees. He was the rich man of the place. And he goes back home and begins to sell all his property, one by one, giving the money to the poor. He told the poor people, come, take whatever you want from my house. Take whatever you want from my house. And when all the property was sold, he went to Francis and said, Francis, I have fulfilled what was requested of me. I have sold all my property. I have given to the poor, and now I want to follow you. Can I follow you? Please come. And that began the Franciscan order. The Franciscan order began that way. And then more and more young men began to come. More and more young men began to come and join him. Okay. So as the group began to grow, okay, Francis went to the Holy Father, the Pope, to ask for permission to live the gospel life and all that. Now I want to come back again to the word friar minor. So there was what should we call ourselves? People are asking us, who are you? Who are you? Who are you? They're all going in different places. They're going to the fields to work. They're going for begging. They're going to look after the leprosy patients. They're going to do some work in the marketplace, lifting some bags and lifting some things and doing the normal work. Evening, coming back to the chapel, sitting down together, praying together, living their life together. Those who went to beg brought the food, they shared the food among themselves, and they ate, and they prayed, and they lived happily. And people were asking them, who are you? What do you call yourself? What do you call yourself? So these brothers came and asked Francis, Francis, what are we? What are we to call ourselves? And they started off by saying, let us say we are called as the little brothers of Jesus, little brothers of Jesus. Okay. But slowly, slowly, Francis began to understand for himself once again that he is called to be, Jesus gave him a vision. You shall be called Friar Minor, Friar Minor, the little brothers, little brothers. And that became for Francis the vision of his life, the vision of his life. Because to be a friar means, to be a brother means, not simply to be brothers to each other, but also to become brothers to the entire universe. Step by step, step by step, step by step, the dream of Francis to be brothers to the entire universe began to unfold itself. And I'll tell you how it happened. Okay. So initially, for example, they began to understand this. Now, Francis said, if we have got one Father in heaven, he is my Father, he is your Father, he is your Father, he is your Father. If all of us have got the same Father, what are we to each other? We are brothers to each other, right? Simple. The logic is very simple. If we have got only one Father, then we are all brothers to each other. So we live as brothers to each other. So we must call ourselves as friars. Friars means brothers. We must call ourselves as brothers. Now, we don't have money. We don't have property. We don't have any goods or possessions with us. Okay. We are not the big people of Assisi. We are the small people of Assisi. And therefore, we will call ourselves as minors, little brothers. And we will take upon ourselves the challenge of being little to everyone. And Francis would say very often, I would like that everyone is my master. Everyone is my master. And I am their servant. I am their servant. Okay. So the word Friar Minor. Okay. And today we are called, for example, our order is called as the Order of Friars Minor. Order of Little Brothers. Okay. To talk about a few stories in the life of St. Francis. Okay. Now let me ask you a question. Are you following what we are saying? Are you engaging with us? Yeah, connecting with us. I heard you have already seen films on St. Francis, right? Some of you have seen some films on St. Francis. Anybody? You have seen any films on St. Francis? Yeah. Okay. The brother, sun, sister, moon. Yes. Okay. So you can connect yourself to some of the things that we are saying. Okay. Now, some time ago, if you just go back in your slides there to the beginning of the slides there, right to the beginning pages, you can see Pope Francis there. Yeah, okay. You have come across this photograph, right? The person of Pope Francis, okay? Now, in the Catholic Church, he is called as the Supreme Pontiff, okay? So just like you have, for example, in Hinduism, you have Shri, 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 okay? The Supreme Pontiff, okay? He's in the Catholic Church, he's called as the Supreme Pontiff. Now, he is elected through a process, and when he is elected, normally they would take some name, they would give themselves a new name, okay, to symbolize whom they want to follow, what kind of spirituality they want to follow, what kind of ideology they want to follow. And this man, he took the name of Francis of Assisi, Francis, see, because he said, my heart and my mind must be the same as St. Francis. I want to serve the poor, and I want to have a universal love, brotherhood love. See? And this is the man who made St. Francis very popular in our present times, Pope Francis. He was inspired by Francis to write an entire document called as the love of creation, the love of creation. Why? Because St. Francis is the patron of creation, in the Catholic Church, and also recognized in the parts of the world. Okay, let us go a little more, some few more pictures as we proceed further. One moment. Okay, influence of Francis, we saw this. Okay, let me explain about this cross. This is the cross of San Damiano. This is the cross of San Damiano we were talking about earlier, okay, which St. Francis was sitting before, meditating, praying, etc. And now he begins to get that beautiful mission of his, go and repair my church. Therefore, my dear friends, even till today, every Franciscan, we keep this as our mission statement. What is my mission statement? Go and repair my church which is falling in ruins. Therefore, we have got brothers working in the UNO. We have got a committee in the UNO called Franciscan Family there, running in the UNO as an NGO. And we have got brothers who are working and sweeping in the toilets in some other places. See? Right from there till there. See? Why? Wherever the church needs us, wherever the people of God needs us, we are there. Wherever there is a brokenness in the church, wherever there is brokenness in the families, we are there. See? So you have a wide spectrum of people in the Franciscan order working in different capacities in different places all over the world. No two Franciscans may do the same work. No two Franciscans may do the same work. Each one does what he is inspired and called to do. See? And I thought this was very similar, to the philosophy that some of you follow. They were explaining to me how each one takes up the work based on their passion. Sister Anna was talking about how Sadhguru was helping her to use her passion, her desires of life, her talents of life for humanity and for humankind, etc. A very similar idea, a lot of parallel between St. Francis. We can see that a lot of parallelism between St. Francis and our own spiritualities available to us. Okay, Bishop of Assisi, see some other things. Okay. Then there is another, this one. There is a place called the Porciuncula, the little portion. The little portion is how big? It's about 15 feet by 10 feet. That is the size of the chapel. That's the size of the chapel. 15 feet by 10 feet. So it's of a small portion, just a very small portion it is. Okay. And it is in that place, in that little place, that Francis began this order. Okay? This is the church there. You can see how small the church is. Okay. And on this church, after the death of Francis, they built a big church to protect this small church. Over the last 800 years, there have been about 4 earthquakes in Assisi. And in all those 4 earthquakes, the big building fell down, collapsed. But this church remains, even till today, as beautiful as it was in the time of St. Francis. As beautiful as it remained in the time of St. Francis. Okay? And Francis spent a lot of time here with his brothers. So here 3 things happened. Number 1, Francis began his order. Okay? Number 2, there was another lady called Clare of Assisi. In your refectory, in your dining hall, I've seen a beautiful picture of Clare of Assisi. She came to join Francis. Clare of Assisi came from another very rich family. And inspired by the preaching of St. Francis in the squares of Assisi, she said, I want to be like him. I want to follow his example. But at that time in history, the 12th century, the church would not allow women to go and do public preaching. It was too risky. It was too dangerous for women to go out and do public preaching. And therefore, the church gave her the permission to stay in a convent, and she decided to live her life in the convent all her life. See? And these are called as the Ladies of Poor Clare, or the Ladies of San Damiano. Today they are called as the Poor Clares of Assisi. There are a number of branches today, and Among them is the fastest growing group in the world, the fastest growing group in the world. In one of their monasteries, every member of the monastery is a PhD holder. And one member of their monastery has done her PhD. She is qualified to be the assistant director of NASA. She is qualified to be the assistant director of NASA. See? Now that is the mystery of life when God invites people to serve Him. See? You begin to use your knowledge, you begin to use your talents in a different way, in a different perspective, and for different reasons. Okay, so this is a beautiful place called Poshunkala. If you happen to go to SSC, make a point to visit this place. Now, this place has got wonderful, wonderful stories. I'll tell you one story that is remarkable, really remarkable. On a particular day, it was very cold. It's very cold in that place, SSC, especially in those times. It was a forest area. And Francis was praying, and he began to get bodily temptations. He began to get bodily temptations. So, in order to overcome his bodily temptations, there was in the rose garden, there was a rose garden there with lots of rose trees. And as you know very well, rose trees have got lots of thorns, right? Big thorns. So he decided now to overcome my bodily temptations. He went and he jumped into that rose bush. He jumped into the rose bush. Now, because Francis was growing in holiness, the story goes that suddenly those rose bushes, the thorns disappeared, and only roses were there to welcome him when he fell on the plants. Only roses were there to welcome him when he fell on the plants. Okay. Now, 800 years later, even till today, when you visit SSC, when you visit this place, ask to see the rose garden. Ask to see the rose garden. Only in that patch of land, the rose trees have got no thorns, even today. Outside that patch of land, the same rose tree has got thorns. Just to indicate, God protects His people. God protects His people, in all situations of life. In all situations of life. When we throw our life in the hands of God, God takes care of us. God carries us. We don't have to worry about anything. See? And, once again, our friends were telling us that, how beautiful it is. When they started this place, there was no money. And everything began to happen because God provided. When we are doing something wonderful for God's service, everything will go so beautiful. Okay. So my dear friends, lack of time, we must stop here. Okay. Let me just conclude with one small story here. The life of Francis and Brother Wolf. There was a village there close by in Assisi where there was a wolf. And a wolf is a wild animal, right? And the wolf was coming regularly into the village, taking their chickens, taking their goats, harming people, etc., etc. And people were taking sticks and stones to beat that wolf and wanted to kill that wolf. One day, Francis was going from that place, and the people told Francis, do something. You don't go in that forest. That wolf will catch you. That wolf will kill you and all that. Don't go in that place. So Francis said, okay. He went and prayed. After a few days, he went in search for that wolf. And he saw that wolf. And the wolf normally, came aggressive. And Francis made a sign of the cross on that wolf and said, I offer you peace. I offer you peace. That wolf sat down at the feet of Francis. And then Francis said, Wolf, Brother Wolf, I will give you promise that you will get food every day, but you must promise me that you will not harm the people from this village. So the wolf put his leg on the leg of Francis. Yes, accepted. And Francis took the wolf and went to the village. People were shocked. How is it that the wolf is coming with St. Francis? And the people, he narrated the whole story to the people, said, you must promise me that you will give this wolf every day its food to eat. And wolf, you must promise me that you will never harm this village again. And the wolf and the people of Gubbio lived happily ever after. When you look at the internet for pictures on St. Francis, surely you will find Francis with a wolf. Remember the story. When we are kind to animals, when we are kind to nature, nature also is kind to us. Animals also are kind to us. And therefore, the lesson that we learn is we must have a universal brotherhood. Universal brotherhood. Not only with ourselves, but also with the animals, with the creation, with the trees, and all that. And that is why for Francis, sun becomes his brother, brother's sun. The moon becomes his sister, sister moon. The water becomes his sister, pure and beautiful. The fire becomes his brother. And every creature in the world gets a place of being a brother and sister to you. I would like to read the blessing of St. Francis. My dear friends, by the way, this presentation is available to you. Okay, it's about 100 pages of presentation with some little pictures. Very simple. I kept it very simple. Any one of you can ask for it, take it, read it at your free time, and enjoy the beautiful life and stories of St. Francis. Okay. Finally, we utter this little blessing of St. Francis. May the Lord bless you, my dear brothers and sisters. May the Lord show his face to you. And may the Lord give you his peace. Thank you. If you have any questions or clarifications, one or two, I will take up quickly. Yeah.
So how can the modern generation embrace and interpret the message of St. Francis?
Yeah. There are many ways in which we can understand and interpret the message of St. Francis. Number one, I told you, total dedication to God. Total dedication to God. Once I surrender my life into the hands of God, God becomes my father. I become his beloved son. God takes care of me, and I live my life. I can live my life in the service of God and service of humankind. Number one. From the life story of the wolf and Francis, okay? If we are in friendship with every creature on this world, every creature on this world is a friend of ours. We won't have enemies. We won't have enemies at all, okay? A third, this thing. There was a story about St. Francis going to meet the Sultan at Jerusalem. And at that time, the Sultan, who was a Muslim, had offered money to his people. If you bring the head of a Christian, I will give you so much money. And Francis and his brothers had gone to meet the Sultan. When the people came to see him, they did not, their swords fell down because it's a different kind of man here. It's a different kind of man here. See? And they took him to the Sultan. Sultan gave him all the hospitality. And Sultan made sure that he went back safe to Assisi. See? Here is a very beautiful opportunity of what we call as inter-religious dialogue. Today, there is so much of conflict in religions, so much of possessiveness about my religion, your religion, his religion, their religion, and we are fighting over things that really do not matter. The path forward is for us to talk to each other, to share our thoughts with each other, to understand each other. There are always commonalities that bind us together, to live on the things that bind us together and to keep aside things that divide us. You see, can become a beautiful message. And the last message is the universal brotherhood of man, the universal brotherhood of creation, the universal brotherhood of the entire cosmic world. My dear friends, I'm offering this as a small gift for your library. Hope that will be useful for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Father. I know time is very short, 60 minutes. We all became oblivious of time, place, and circumstances when we listen to stories of God. And as Father was talking, I got this deeper urge that I should once again visit Assisi And not just me, I think all our students also got the deeper edge. And Sadhguru says this place is a Siddha Sankalpa Bhumi, because people like you and great Mahatmas visit this place, and so much good is happening here. So whatever one thinks for, whatever one desires for, it would happen. So we all the students in all the campuses, we have a great prayer at the feet of Jesus and at the feet of Francis, that we should visit that place and take the inspiration. And as you said, the main objective of this university is not to make engineers or doctors or graduates, but to make people of love, people who follow the message of love all and serve all, which Bhagwan Baba has given us. So on the behalf of all the students, we request your blessings so that we all walk on the path of Christ and on the path of St. Francis. And on the behalf of university, I request Brother Tara Shankar to hand over a small gift to Father.